This video series is an introduction to philosophy. We're going to start with evidence. We'll begin with a few general points, then an example. Here's what I want you to think about as we go along. Does what I'm saying make sense to you? Can you see for yourself that it's correct? Or do you see anything wrong with it? Philosophy should be clear and understandable enough that you can judge it for yourself. I don't want you to ever take someone's word for it. So, you already know about evidence. It's used in court to figure out if someone is guilty. It's used in science to test theories. It's any kind of data, facts, or observations. But there's a lot of facts out there. My door is more than an inch tall, that's a fact. But it's only worthy of the name evidence if it's relevant in some way to a question that we're trying to answer or investigate. That means a fact could be evidence in one context, but not in another. Suppose we roll a ball down a slope and time how long it takes. That's a perfectly good physics experiment, and it gives us evidence about gravity. But if you try to introduce it in a court case, the judge will say that it's no good as evidence. He won't let it in. So how do we use evidence? The point is to help us figure stuff out, and we need to know specifically how to do that. The basic answer is, if an idea is contradicted by the evidence, then it's wrong. So it helps us rule out bad ideas. As a brief side note, evidence can be wrong too. So you have to bear that in mind, that sometimes the evidence could have been wrong and the thing it disagreed with was actually right. And we'll come back to that later. So, theories that disagree with the evidence are wrong, but what about theories that agree with the evidence? They could be true, but we don't really know. The evidence hasn't told us either way. So we'll move on to an example. The first thing we need for our example is a problem. Without a problem, we don't know what sort of evidence might be relevant. So our problem is, what can we say about the color of balls? In philosophy in general, it's good to start with a problem in mind that you want to solve. But don't think of problems as bad things. Any kind of question counts. It's just a neutral word. So, we're going to have some evidence and some theories and see what the evidence can tell us about the theories. You might expect we'd start with the evidence first, but we're going to do it the other way around. The best evidence would help us decide between theories, but we need to know what the theories are first in order to best be able to choose that kind of evidence that will help the most. Okay, time to make up some theories. One thing to bear in mind is that philosophy doesn't have to be really formal. By theory, I just mean any kind of idea that tries to answer the question. So our first theory is going to be that all balls are red. The important thing with these theories isn't how good they are or how important they are. Don't worry about that. We just want to see how they interact with the evidence. So our next theory is going to be all balls are green. Then we'll have no balls are red or green. Most balls are red. And finally, all balls are white, but they look different through tinted glasses. So these are our theories, and now we're going to have a piece of evidence. We go out and we find a ball, and it's red. Now we're going to look at what that can tell us about the theories. So we'll just go one at a time. About theory 1, all balls are red. There's no problem there, so it doesn't really tell us anything. We'll move on to the second one that says all balls are green. That's contradicted by our evidence. We saw a red one, so it doesn't work. We're going to cross it out. What about the third one? It says no balls are red or green, but we saw a red ball, so that one's out too. What about most balls are red? Well, there's no problem with that one, we'll leave it. And for all balls are white, well, our evidence didn't say whether we were wearing glasses or not, so we're going to have to leave it for now. We'd need to add a little bit more to the evidence before we could throw it out. So next up, we're going to add a second piece of evidence. We find another ball, and it's green. So we saw a green ball. What happens to theory 1 now? It's no good. We saw a green one, so they can't all be red. We'll have to cross it out. Now what about the second theory? Well, we saw a green ball, all balls are green. There's no problem there. However, we don't really have to revisit it. Once a theory is contradicted by one piece of evidence, that's the end of it. It can't be right anymore because it contradicts the evidence. So we're just going to skip over number 2 and 3 entirely. Go on to number 4. It says most balls are red. We have a green one, so that doesn't contradict it. It could still be true. And the fifth one could also still be true. So we leave those alone. Alright, on to our next piece of evidence. We're going to add in the fact that we weren't wearing glasses. So now we can rule out number 5, because we weren't wearing glasses, but the balls weren't white. So this leaves us with only one theory left, the theory that most balls are red. And we know from our life experience that this theory isn't very good. There's tennis balls and soccer balls, those aren't red, and there's a lot of those. So it's just not true that most balls are red. But as far as the evidence that we looked at goes, it's the only one left. So that demonstrates that even if a theory survives being examined with all of your evidence, it could still be wrong. You don't know that it's true. Evidence only helps us rule out theories that are bad. And not necessarily all of them. We might need more evidence in the future. So here's the main points to remember. We need to have some question in mind first, and then our evidence comes in second. Then the evidence can help us answer the question. As we saw, even if all the evidence agrees with a theory, it could still be wrong. But if one piece of evidence disagrees with a theory, then that theory is ruled out.